Welcome back, Hema-Tec family, to another episode of the Kidney Corner. Today, we have a special guest joining us, someone who keeps the wheels turning behind the scenes. Yes, he's the numbers guy, the voice of reason, and the heart behind many of our financial decisions. He's our very own CFO, Paul Mangardi. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chris.
Paul, thanks so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and talk about some very exciting things happening here at Hema-Tec. One of the big things we want to talk about today is the new exciting travel policy that we're rolling out. It's a big win for our team. But before we dive into that, I would love our listeners to get to know you a little bit better. But for those of you who might not know who you are yet, can you share a little bit about yourself and the role you provide here at Hema-Tec as our CFO?
Sure. My name's Paul Mangardi. I've been with Hema-Tec in one form or another for probably 20 years. I've been full-time for the last 5 years. I have kind of fallen in love over those years with this industry and the opportunity to help people in need. And my role here is really one of balancing stability and growth financially. You know, if we have something that's stable, it's something that will provide for our team members long term. And if we have growth that is reasonable, we also have opportunities to grow within the organization. And if we're growing too quickly, you know, then it can create some chaos. And so it's really balancing those factors, making sure we've allocated resources where we need to allocate them so that we transition through those processes smoothly.
All right, Paul, before we get in the travel piece, which we'll talk about in a bit, you've been a part of so many milestones here at Hema-Tec. From our growth over the years to adopting new technology, what is one recent change you've seen that you're most proud of?
Yeah, good question, Chris. I think the big recent one was our expansion to Wisconsin. We've always kind of just grown from the core, which is a great strategy, but kind of being able to go to a completely new remote city and stand up multiple hospitals in a weekend is something that I think would be challenging for anyone in our industry, no matter the size. I think our team was amazing. We did it really well. And I think having proven that we can do that and the hospitals and the market seeing that we can do that is something that's going to have a big impact on us long term.
Yeah, Paul, that was definitely a major milestone in Hema-Tec's history. Launching an entirely new state of 5 hospitals all in one day, a huge shout out to the team who made it happen. It truly takes a collective effort, and we were fortunate to have such incredible group. So as we shift gears, can you share something people might be surprised to learn about the world of the CFO?
I think there's a disconnect between seeing movies potentially, and I would say that for any leadership role and what it actually is when you're in the role. You know, I think when you're in a leadership position, you have to realize that at the end of the day, you're there to help people solve their hardest problems. So, you know, good news trickles up, but also bad news trickles up, and you need to be ready to look at those challenges as challenges. And I think that's really at all levels in the organization, but the only difference is, you know, if you're overseeing more, you're going to encounter more of them. And so you really have to have a good attitude for change and for tackling problems so that it doesn't overwhelm you.
That ties right into our core values of tackling every problem with a solution. And that's exactly what today's episode is about. We're here to talk about something changing here at Hema-Tec, our updated travel policy. Now, some of you might have already heard a little bit about it, but for those just finding out through this podcast, get ready because we got some great news to share. So Paul, let's kick things off. Can you give everyone a high-level overview of what's changing and what this new policy means to our team?
Yeah, so we've recognized that there's kind of 2 really important pieces to what we do in acutes. One is obviously we're experts, we're specialists in how to run acute programs. That's difficult for hospitals to do on their own, and because we do it across many hospitals, we can aggregate best practices and truly come with expertise that helps them run programs with really good outcomes. And the second one is there's just the nature of acutes being in a hospital setting is very different than chronics and home care where things are scheduled. You can have a patient volume needing 50 treatments one week and 100 the next week, and how do you really manage that if you're an independent hospital? You really can't. And so the best way to do that is have a shared resource or a shared partner that can manage resources across multiple hospitals. And so we realize that travel is actually a really important component of what we do. And it's also really important that everyone is treated fairly and that we recognize and allocate resources to things that are important. So we've put a lot of effort into trying to figure figure out how our travel policy what it should look like and how it should operate so that we can make sure that people are treated fairly for their travel and that they're compensated appropriately and their time is respected for what they need to do their job well.
That's great. Thank you, Paul. So the idea of creating a new travel policy, where did that originate? And what were the main goals the leadership team had in mind when those conversations first began?
Yeah, so so personally, I'm always trying to figure out where can I apply resources that we get maximum impact, right, at the end of the day. And, we recognize that, like I said, that travel is an area that is into our business, given the shifts in volume. And it's also really important that our team members know that they're treated fairly and, in a way that makes sense, given what their responsibilities are. And so it's something we've been looking at for a long time. But then on top of that, as we've been looking at it, so it's been over a year, we're also getting feedback from the field. And so we do listen to that feedback, whether it's critical, positive, a happy message, an unhappy message, it doesn't matter. It's all data. And we really need to listen to what's happening. And so, this is something that's kind of raised to the surface as an important issue for everyone. And it's something that we want to tackle and address head on.
Tackle every problem with a solution. That is who we are. And part of living that is truly valuing our team's opinions, ideas, and suggestions, and how we keep getting better as a company. Staying innovative isn't just something we talk about, it's something we do. Now, this updated travel policy includes mileage reimbursement and compensation based on your distance from work. But from what I understand, there's a little more to that. So Paul, can you walk everyone through how it's actually going to work?
Right. So one of the problems of trying to, if you're a company and you're getting larger and you're growing, you need to standardize things. And the problem with standardization is not everything's standard. So, you can make it standard and simple, but then there's going to be cases where it's like, well, it doesn't really work here, it doesn't really work there. And what we tend to do is if you want to make things more customized and do it in a way that's not going to be burdensome for everyone, that's kind of where technology comes in. So there's going to be, the framework that we developed. So the way it's going to work is, everyone is in a certain zone and we're going to look at the closest facility within that zone. And then based off that, if people are traveling outside that distance or a certain kind of geographic radius or area that's reasonable, then we're going to start compensating for both mileage as well as time on top of that. So that's going to allow people to move to other zones when they're in need, kind of help each other out in a way that would be good teamwork and make, one person's hard day an average day and another person's light day an average day, so that we can all help each other and do it in a way where you're not worried about how that's going to impact you financially, in order to be helping your team members out.
So it sounds like the goal is to reward the team members for traveling a bit further than their closest hospital, and both through mileage and additional compensation.
Correct. And just to make it clear, this is actually going to be for your commute. So we're already traveling. If you go from one facility to another, that is something that, is a responsibility we're expecting. And so therefore it needs to be compensated. But this is on top of that saying, well, wait a second, like you don't just work at one hospital, you work at many hospitals. Sometimes you want to help another zone because they're struggling. And this is a way to make sure that when you do that, it's set up in a way that's going to encourage you to want to help your team members out.
This all sounds really fantastic, Paul. Now, I know one of the first things our team is going to wonder about is how this affects their day-to-day routine. Are they going to have to do anything different? Will they need to track something new or enter new extra information into the app compared to what they currently do? What changes, if any, should our team members expect?
Good question. So one of the reasons it takes a while to kind of roll these things out is we want to implement in a way that's not burdensome. Our current policy around punching in and out is if you enter a hospital, you punch in. If you exit a hospital, you punch out. And so the way we've set it up is there's actually going to be no change from the way it currently is. As you know, when you punch out for your last hospital for the day, you usually pick a reason you're punching out, and the reason will be end of shift. So on an automated basis, we're processing all those punches in the back end. We're going to be building shifts from your punch data. We'll know your first hospital of the day, we'll know your last hospital of the day, and from that we're going to be able to take, where your home location is, where your closest hospital is, and figure out exactly how much extra travel you're doing on top of what's normal, and then and do those calculations on an automated basis. This is something we're going to be rolling out on the technology side, so there will be some communication and training around it, but there really isn't a whole lot of burden. I think the only thing you may see is potentially someone from the back office reaching out to correct information, potentially if you forget an end of shift flag. There's very few of those, but in the case that it looks like maybe data was entered incorrectly, there'll be someone reaching out to help you correct that.
That sounds like a pretty easy lift for our team in the field, which is great. Can you share the financial impact this is having and what is being given back to the team members?
Right, so that's another area where, we do need to do analysis before we make big changes like this. Our goal is to give back as much as we can to the team, but we also need to make sure we're long-term sustainable. So what we did is we went ahead and modeled out a month from past history using the data that we currently have. And it looks like the investment at this point would be somewhere in the $200,000 range of additional compensation. And obviously as the company grows, or if we, are traveling more, maybe because of this policy, I think that that number could potentially be bigger. And so it's something that is important. I think it's a good allocation of resources and it's fair.
Thanks for the breakdown, Paul. We're excited to get back to our team like this. And this new policy is just one more step forward. It'll be rolling out very soon. Now, let's turn the spotlight back to you. Sure, you spent a lot of time in the world of spreadsheets and numbers, but there's a lot more to who you are and the value you bring to Hema-Tec. So tell us, beyond the financial side of things, what really drives your passion here at Hema-Tec?
Yeah, great. So, what drives you changes over the years. I think what drove me 20 years ago is different than what drives me today. I've been with Hema-Tec for 5 years. I think for me, it's a great industry to be in. I think most nurses go into this field because the same reasons, but I'm obviously not giving direct patient care, but I have an impact on people that are critically in need. Yeah, on a nursing community, I think there's probably no more noble profession than nursing. So there's something that we can do to create an environment that's better for nurses than what's currently out there. That's very important to me. And technicians, I don't want to leave it, and biomed and all the other roles, I don't want to leave anyone out, but it is important that we have something good before we grow it. And then, knowing if we're doing that, we're going to be having a positive impact in the community. And I think, if we're achieving those things, I think, I can say I've had an impact and it's something that's meaningful. That's important to me. On top of that, I have a family of 4 children from 9 to 17, 3 boys and a girl. They keep me very busy. And I'm also highly involved in my church. So faith is important to me. And so when I kind of put all those things together, along with a few hobbies, fishing, mountain biking, hiking, there isn't a lot of extra time after all that, but it's been a real honor to work with everyone here at Hema-Tec, and I feel blessed to do so.
So that aligns perfectly with just another one of our core values. It's delivering on our promise with a can-do attitude. And Paul, I have to say, it's refreshing to have a CFO who focuses on far beyond numbers, facts, and figures on a spreadsheet. So you lead with people first. You care about the team, and that mindset strengthens everything that we do here. We are truly blessed to have someone in your role who sees that our people are the greatest asset and not just financials behind the scenes. So looking ahead, let me ask you this. What are some exciting things or operational changes you see coming for Hema-Tec as we move forward?
Yeah, good question. I think, we've obviously made a really big push on technology, and I think technology and operations is just going to be a big push for a long time, and it's going to be a little bit of the DNA of who we are. We're not willing to sacrifice quality, but yet we want to be able to have a positive impact on the hospitals and on our team. And the only way you can satisfy all those kind of stakeholders is to actually do things in a really organized fashion, a really clear fashion, a fashion that doesn't have a lot of waste, a way that kind of respects all the stakeholders as well. And so, we're investing heavily in technology. We're going to be continuously improving when it comes to operations. And I think, if you look at the acute market, it's only 4 to 5% of the whole dialysis market. So there's, 80% is chronics, 15% is home, and 5% is acute. And so it's not the largest focus of most people in the industry. And I think, the good thing about that is it's also one of the hardest areas of the industry, right? It's not scheduled. You have demand coming in. You can have huge shifts in treatments. And I think if we get the operations of that right, we'll have a significant impact on the hospitals that we serve.
And Paul, you've been with us full time for over 5 years now, but you've been involved with Hema-Tec for over 20 plus. So what is one piece of advice that you would want to give one of our new team members here at Hema-Tec that makes our company special?
Yeah, no, it's good. I think it's important to know that everyone's contribution is actually very important. Chris and I are obviously doing our best to take care of everyone, and the whole back office team, and protect everyone and try to make really good strategic moves that, create an environment that's positive for our team members. But the individual contributions make a big difference. If I look at kind of the contract growth that we've had, our positive reputation, when we're talking to people, they're mentioning specific names of people who've had an impact in different areas, and we're not always there seeing it because the reality is we're a really geographically dispersed company. We're in 3 states with 100 to 150 employees, and when you have those team members out there and they're kind of that far away geographically, it might feel like you're not being seen sometimes, but I think I just want people to know that actually you are being seen and what you do really does matter, because we get that feedback and we hear it. And that's probably one of the favorite things for me in this role is when we're meeting with a senior leader at a hospital and they mention specific people and the impact they've had. And that happens regularly. And I think, if we're all on that same mission and we understand why we're doing things, we understand why what we're doing is important, I think it makes it easier to go above and beyond and know, what you're doing matters.
I think that's a really great piece of advice for the new team member joining Hema-Tec. That's really powerful, Paul, and I appreciate you sharing it. So before we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts or words you'd like to share with the team?
Yeah, I think, don't be afraid to give feedback to anyone in your leadership and back office. We do listen to it. It is always, you're always balancing everyone's needs and you're also having to be responsible. And so we're always trying to do that to the best of our ability. We do care to do things right. And so, I would say, in the areas that we're failing, because we are going to fail once in a while, please be patient and know where our hearts are at. And, I think we have a really bright future together. And I think we're going to make a difference. Not just in the 3 states we're in now, but I think many more. And I'm excited to do that journey with you.
So Paul, it's been a pleasure talking with you today. I hope this gives our team in the field a better look at who you are, the passion you bring, and the work you do behind the scenes, especially with the updated travel policy we're rolling out here soon. We're really excited about what that means for everyone. So to all our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate each one of you more than you know. Stay tuned for more updates, and we hope that you have an amazing day. Paul, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate you.